Welcome to Movie Panel's One Shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. And as we continue our March Madness, as we go deep into Ghost Rider and all things Ghost Rider, we are talking about his 8-episode run on the ABC show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., whatever the official title is. But joining me to talk about that from the 80s Flick Flashback podcast, just everybody knows him by now. It's Tim Williams. How are you, Tim?
I'm doing good, Laramie. Thanks for having me on this one. This was fun to go back and watch some Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episodes, as I had watched that show when it was on originally.
Yeah, I remember watching these when they originally aired. I remember the promos.
Yeah.
And just so much excitement that they were going to do Ghost Rider.
Right.
Not knowing at the time they were going to do Robbie Reyes, which we'll get into in a minute, but that they were going to do Ghost Rider. So it was exciting. And this, of course, was back when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was actually still kind of decent to watch, because I know I stopped watching it not too long after this season. This was season 4.
I don't think I finished this season. I think I saw as much as the 8 episodes, and then when it came back, I didn't really get back into it. It had kind of lost its luster for me at that point.
Yeah, I think that's where it was for me too, because the second part of the season was the LMD storyline. And I do remember watching the LMD storyline, but yeah, this is where I think the LMD storyline was just a little too much of a stretch for me. So
yeah, I think when it moved to Netflix, I tried to go back and watch the episodes that I'd missed, but I didn't get very far. So
yeah, I did the same. I still haven't finished it. I have not finished the series. But and I hate it too, because I do like Clark Gregg as Coulson.
Yeah. It started out so promising, and then it just, I think them trying to incorporate it with the movies, I think didn't work as well as they wanted it to. You just the studio, the movie studio, and the TV side just weren't communicating well enough to keep things.
Oh yeah,
going.
There was a lot of there's a lot of history, which I haven't looked deep into, of the Marvel Studio movie division and Marvel Studio television division, them just butting heads about a lot of stuff. Well, I know part of it had to do with what they were trying to get out of these 8 episodes. We'll get into that. What were you going to say?
No, I was just saying, but you got to think about, movies, you have time to write and rewrite and shoot and make changes, where TV is like, no, we've got to have these episodes done in a shorter amount of time. So if a movie makes a change,
you're also looking at possibly spoiling things in the show.
True. Because
you've got to tell stories, before maybe the movie, people who didn't get to see it in theaters and are waiting for it to come out on Blu-ray or for it to come on television or whatnot, now with streaming and all. But yeah, I only remember the biggest connection was after Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, that was the biggest one. Because I think that's when they had Nick Fury made his little cameo for 5 minutes on one of the episodes.
Yeah, they had a Nick Fury, and Lady Sif.
Yeah, she was on there.
Appearance in one of the episodes. But yeah, then they completely went away, and then it was almost like it got too confusing, because they were doing things on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that you're going, there ain't no way that the cinematic universe isn't aware of what's going on.
Right.
That kind of lost a little of its luster with all that, because I think a lot of us, I know I was just excited going, when will the Avengers get to know that Coulson's still alive?
Right.
When will Coulson come back to the MCU? Of course, he showed up in Captain Marvel, but that was, pre everything. But
I think it kind of became irrelevant, because the big part of Winter Soldier was that S.H.I.E.L.D. had been compromised by Hydra. So then S.H.I.E.L.D.
Which they did that story.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, which they did follow the story, but it was like, I remember after seeing Captain America, the Winter Soldier, I was like, well, what are they going to do with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. now? How is that going to, do you even have a show anymore? Because I think it came out while it was on summer hiatus, because it probably came out in May or whatever.
Well, they did, because that was, I think, season 3 which was the Agents of Hydra storyline.
Right.
And you found out that Ward, one of the agents that had been on it, since you found out he was Hydra. Yeah, they and of course this season they're dealing with the aftermath of all that.
They're trying to relaunch Shield and with the new director and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but we're not going to get into all of that. We're just going to talk Ghost Rider. Because that is what our focus is. But again, for those of you who haven't picked up on, this was season 4 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It is only the first 8 episodes. He does not return after that. They do tease it in the season finale of season 4 when they do the logo, they do the fire again, and maybe teasing that he would return, but he never did. I think that was also maybe a tease for the Hulu show that they were supposed to do spin off of this, but we'll talk about that a little later. But this was back in 2016, the first episode airing on September 20th of 2016, and then, like I said, then it was the 8 episodes that followed. And they decided to go with the 3rd, 4th, depending on how you follow the Ghost Rider story, but the 3rd main Ghost Rider, the Flaming Skull Ghost Rider, Robbie Reyes, who was still fairly new at this point because he had debuted in all new Ghost Rider #1 in March of 2014. So just a little over 2 years before this. He was created by Philippe Smith and Trad Moore. And this is there's a lot of differences here. So what was your knowledge of Robbie Reyes prior to watching these 8 episodes?
I really didn't have any knowledge of him prior to watching it on the show. Of course, I'd seen the Ghost Rider. I'd seen the Ghost Rider movies or the movie with Nicolas Cage. So that was really my only knowledge of Ghost Rider. As we know in the show, I wasn't a big comic book reader. I'm more of a comic book TV show and movie watcher.
So did you know that there was more than one Ghost Rider?
I did not. So I was a little surprised when it was like, oh, he's not on a motorcycle. He's driving a car instead. And it's a different guy. But different name. So
in the comic book, Robbie is still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So much younger than he's being portrayed here. The origin is a little different. I don't know. I'm kind of curious as to your take on this. So in the comic, his origin is that he's a mechanic, just like he was in the show. It's not his car though.
Right.
It's a drug lord's car. Although you later find out it wasn't even the drug lord's car. It was actually Robbie's Uncle Eli's car. Mm-hmm. And Uncle Eli, of course, in the show, but we'll get to him in a minute. Yeah. And Robbie unknowingly took the car to do a street race to try to earn money because he's taking care of his brother, just like they talk about in the show. And he's driving it in the race. They think cops are coming after them, so they break off. Robbie ends up in a alley, and when he gets out, he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, blah blah blah," and then they just gun him down.
Mm-hmm.
So Robbie is murdered by. It ends up being these mercenaries that work for this the villain. I won't get into all those details, but he is then possessed by, as he later finds out, he is possessed by the spirit of his Uncle Eli,
mm-hmm.
who he then also finds out was a serial killer.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah. And there's a dynamic that I really like in the comic of he and Eli actually talk to each other, like in his head.
Right.
But so that's a quick rundown there of the comic version of Robbie. So what were your thoughts about the way they portrayed it? Because clearly they made it in the show where he is just another version of the same Ghost Rider.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't read about his comic book origin until after watching these episodes to kind of get ready for this. So it was interesting to see that, you knew they're going to take liberties because they're they're having to put this character in an ongoing series that's got other plots that they've got to work together. So, but yeah, to see that Eli, his uncle, still the bad guy because he ends up being the bad guy in the show, but totally different. And of course, they do reference at that one point where Coulson's like, we've had a Ghost Rider before. He's like, you did, like, oh, there was, So you're like, would he know there was a Ghost Rider before him? Which it doesn't seem like from his little origin flashback story that, well, there was a Ghost Rider that kind of passed the powers on to him, or calls him the devil. I don't know.
Yeah, they I think heavily imply that it is Johnny Blaze.
Yeah,
who just gives him part of his powers to make him the Ghost Rider. But yeah, I don't know, the whole deal with the devil thing. I mean, again, that's not what happens. Like he is just possessed.
Yeah, because in the comic,
spirit in the comic.
In the comic, doesn't he and Johnny Blaze, or he and Ghost Rider have to kind of fight it out? Or did I read that right?
Yeah. So no, in his comic, Johnny Blaze does show up, and there is a Ghost Rider versus Ghost Rider kind of fight, but it's mainly just because Johnny Blaze, Ghost Rider, doesn't know who he is. He's trying to stop him, whereas, again, Robbie's version of Ghost Rider is a little bit more evil. Although there is a lot of that to Johnny Blaze's Ghost Rider, but that goes deeper than any of the movies or shows go with the Zarathos demon that is the spirit of vengeance for Johnny Blaze. But it's Johnny who actually teaches Robbie how to, you're the one in control. Like you have to show your Uncle Eli that he's not the one running the show. And they again, that's one of the things I like about the comic character is that he is always having to battle. He does not kill.
Okay.
And he is always having to battle his uncle, in his psyche.
Right.
So that his uncle does not get control, because when his uncle gets control, it drains Robbie, and of course bad things are going to happen. What did you think, though, about... Because here was the other thing I didn't like. This Robbie Reyes is just mad all the time.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I wasn't a big fan of this variation. Not that I know a lot of different variations of Ghost Rider, but I don't feel like they really fleshed out the character enough on the show. I mean, once again, he just seemed like a convenient added piece to their story, but he really didn't. Like I said, we finally got his kind of backstory when, telling Gabe about what really happened, and, the story that he thought of what happened wasn't what happened in the car accident or whatever. That kind of gave it a little bit more depth, but everything before that, it was just, I don't know, just didn't seem to be... I didn't think the show focused enough on him for me. Of course, the other storylines weren't all that great either on the show, but yeah, it I wasn't a big fan. I mean, I watched it again, but it wasn't, I won't say I suffered through it, but parts of it was enjoyable, but overall I was just like, yeah, I see now why I didn't really watch much more after this.
Yeah, because they had a lot going on. Because not only, like you said, we talked about earlier, they had the rebuilding of S.H.I.E.L.D. going with the new director, who is also a Inhuman.
Right.
Although he's playing a character who's not Inhuman, but I really get frustrated with the Inhuman stuff going on in Marvel. Then you've got, Daisy being on the run, and then that just gets resolved way too easily. Yeah,
and that was the thing. It was like it was almost like they brought him in to bring Daisy back into the fold. Like it was almost like he was just shoehorned character in, just to kind of be a bridge between her and the team again. Because his whole storyline was with Daisy. I mean, that was they were pretty much the connected tissue of the storyline. So I wasn't a big fan of the character that they had. I didn't like the choices they made of her character, where they took her character leading up to this season. So it's probably why I didn't go over too well with me either. So
I always had a problem. We're going to get off the rails here a little bit.
that's what podcasting's all about.
Yeah, I always had a problem too with they made her inhuman, but then her powers were actually destroying her body, which I'm like, isn't the point of being an inhuman is that your body is made to have whatever the powers are that you have?
Right.
So that was confusing. But yeah, then they're also setting up the whole LMD storyline that they were going to do for the rest of the season. So you got all this stuff with Ada.
Right.
And I mean they try to tie it all together with the Darkhold. which is, again, I think this was the first time the Darkhold made an appearance. I know we've seen the Darkhold 3 times in Marvel stuff. You got it here. Then it was also on the Outsiders show that was on Hulu or ABC Family or...
Was that FX or was that Freeform? It might have been. I don't remember.
No, I think it was Freeform.
Okay.
I don't think it was FX. It was Freeform. Of course, I think that was when it was still called ABC Family.
I gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, they had I said the Outsiders, the Runaways.
Runaways, yeah.
The Runaways, yeah. It appears in the Runaways.
That might have been Hulu when Hulu was doing stuff.
I think it was
because Tyra watched a little bit of that.
And then of course most recently it appeared in Multiverse of Madness, and of course looks completely different.
Of course it does.
But whatever. But yeah, so yeah, you got the Darkhold, which I'll just go ahead and throw out its little background, introduced in Marvel Spotlight number 4, which I'd like to point out, Marvel Spotlight number 5, introduction of Ghost Rider.
Okay.
Of Johnny Blaze's Ghost Rider.
There you go.
So yeah, but the Darkhold, Marvel Spotlight number 4, created by Gary Conway and Mike Pluge, who also would later help create Ghost Rider. For those of you who don't know, in the comics, they did a little bit of this in explaining it in Multiverse of Madness, but it was written by this demon named Chthon, and it contains all of his evil doings and spells and all. And it's supposed to be like the main book, like even something like the Necronomicon, who is what a lot of people know, Book of the Dead,
right?
People Evil Dead. I mean, I've known what the Necronomicon, but in the Marvel universe, the Necronomicon was even like based off of the Darkhold, like it was the resource for the Necronomicon. So this was the evil book, and of course that's what they used to be the MacGuffin, I guess you would say, of this storyline. Now, did you get the idea that the Darkhold is what drove Eli mad, or was Eli already a psychopath before the Darkhold?
I kind of want to say he was already, like it just...
So did I.
It just amplified what was already in him.
Yes, and I think that was them, again, trying to make as much of a connection with the comic, with making him, again, in the comic, he was a serial killer.
Right.
I had a problem with it. I would have liked to have had that aspect of the character. I get the origin had to be slightly different, condense it a little bit for the sake. But if you just had him, him saying he was just all of a sudden possessed by a demon. If they didn't want to go the Uncle Eli route, fine. But let it be some demon, and just having the voice in his head, you're hearing the voice in his head telling him, we've got to stop them. We've got to, whatever. I think that could have been fun.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, they changed Gabe, too, because in the comic, Gabe's much younger, and his disability is developmental.
Okay.
It's something he was born with.
Okay.
And something that Robbie's having to deal with. I didn't mind that they made him part of the origin story.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mind that. I was okay with that.
Like I said, the origin story was probably the better part of the whole storyline, and made some things make more sense. And it tied stuff together where it seemed everything. It was a lot of loose ends. It seems like the beginning, like there were kind of loose connections, and then it kind of pulled it all together at that point, which they kind of had to because they were coming to the end of that storyline. But
so, did you like the muscle car?
I did. It was being so used to the motorcycle, I kind of missed it at the beginning, but it it was cool. It kind of became its own character after a while,
Yeah.
which was kind of cool.
I like that they went full for it, kind of introducing it by showing them blow it up, and then it just makes that flip in the air.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, hey, you're going to introduce this muscle car. That's the way to do it.
Mm-hmm. I did think it was funny because I think at some point did they reference the Fast and Furious at some point, because isn't that the same kind of car that Vin Diesel drove in the first Fast and Furious?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know the Fast and Furious movies.
I do.
I have not seen one of those past 2.
Oh.
I saw 2 Fast, 2 Furious, and I have not seen a Fast and Furious movie
Well, that
since.
would be the one that would make you want to not watch anymore. When they rebooted it with 4, it got better. Fast 5 is...
That's what I've heard.
Fast 5 is by far the best one of all the ones they've done. But it's a heist movie, so it's more fun. That's when it completely became an action movie and not about street racing.
Yeah, the fact that they now look more like comic book movies,
Yeah,
I
definitely.
probably will get back into it. Yeah, but
the last one was definitely a comic book movie.
well, and then this upcoming one, they're or was it the last one? Again, I don't watch them.
Right.
I know that they're going into space, or they
That was
went
the
into space.
that was the last one.
That was the last one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Hey, look,
A discussion for another time.
If you want me to believe that Vin Diesel and John Cena are brothers, why not?
Yeah, that's terrible. That was terrible.
Let's go with that. What'd you think of the look of Robbie Reyes as Ghost Rider? Because they are drastically different in the comics.
Okay. I mean, I thought it was fine. I mean, the flaming head is the flaming head. I didn't really notice much of a difference.
Yeah, but it's not so much of a traditional skull. Like and they played it off a little bit in the show, but in the comic, it almost has a almost robotic, if not just, It actually looks like a helmet type. Like there's even a part in the comic where it looks like there's a hole in kind of the forehead part, and there's a flame just coming straight out of that hole.
I gotcha. Yeah.
So
I think they were trying to make it closer to the movie to kind of tie the movie somewhat into it, is what I thought. You've seen the movie more recently than I have, so maybe you saw it differently.
Yeah. I'm actually, right here while we're talking, I'm actually going to pull up a picture.
Side by side?
Yeah. Well, I don't really have a side by side right now. I can try to find one, but just to show you what Robbie Reyes' Ghost Rider looks like. There's a good shot.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's not just your traditional like skeleton skull look there, and then you see that what I was talking about, the kind of
it's almost
I
like
just think of it as like a hole in the front of his head.
It's almost like a flame mohawk kind of a. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's definitely more robotic than just skull.
But you also notice as we're flipping through this, they kept the jacket.
They did keep the jacket. Yeah, I knew the jacket was pretty authentic.
Yeah, which is also an homage to the original Johnny Blaze, because he kind of had this like they made it look like it was solid black in the original Ghost Rider comics with Johnny Blaze, but then there was this blue that almost did that same kind of box across the jacket. So I think that was intentional,
right?
And then of course they had him use the chain. What do you think of when he pulls the chain out in that one?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, the action sequences were actually pretty good. I will give the action sequences.
That's usually the case with all of these Ghost Rider stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Robbie even had that going back to that kind of hole in the Ghost Rider's head. Robbie actually has like a scar. That's like a V-shaped scar on his forehead. So let me ask you this: so the show was supposed to be as we've talked about, I feel like a lot recently, a backdoor pilot.
Right.
There was supposed to be a Hulu television series that continued the story of Robbie Reyes. That was then scrapped. Again, the whole issues with Marvel, Kevin Feige and whoever was in charge of television, just button heads. So that was scrapped. But do you think that there's a place for Ghost Rider? Do you think it should be a TV show? Or do you think we need to bring him in now that they are connecting everything? So even the shows, the Disney Plus series are connected to the MCU. If they bring back Ghost Rider, should he have a show? Should he have a movie? should he be a secondary character within someone else's show? Like,
yeah,
what are your thoughts?
that's what I was gonna say. I wouldn't give him his own movie right now. I was like, maybe a TV show, but I think a secondary character with someone else, I think would be good. And I'll just say and I don't have the actor's name, but the actor that played him on the show, he was okay. I don't think he had quite the star power I don't think he held an audience the way that someone needs to lead a show. I mean, like I said, he was okay. Yeah. He just didn't really do anything for me. It's hard to beat Nick Cage, and
Well, is it though?
Well, I mean, good or bad, he leaves an impression. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, but again, this is Robbie Reyes. Yeah. This isn't Johnny Blaze. Yeah. So if they were to bring it back, or bring him back, is it? And it was Gabriel Luna.
Gotcha.
Gabriel Luna.
Right.
Was the actor, but should they bring Ghost Rider into the MCU? Should they go back to Johnny Blaze? Should they acknowledge that Johnny Blaze existed, but then go with Danny Ketch? I don't know how much you know about Danny Ketch. Or do they do this Ghost Rider? Do they do Robbie Reyes?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that question.
In other words, I'm asking: do they do the muscle car Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, or do they do the traditional motorcycle Ghost Rider? Because there's really not a lot of difference between Danny Ketch and Johnny Blaze.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because I kind of like both of them. I mean, I like the Johnny Blaze, and I like the idea of Robbie Reyes. Not maybe this incarnation on the show didn't do it for me, but I think I would probably revive the Robbie Reyes just because. Yeah. I don't know. Johnny Blaze was good too. It's like a flip of a coin for me, because I think both stories kind of deserve to be told, because I think they both have interesting origins. I think Robbie Reyes, if they stuck closer to the comic, would be really good. Would be a better, more compelling. That might need its own TV show to really flesh out that full story, than trying to cram it into a movie. Yeah.
I think if you're going to do a movie, I think Danny Ketch is the way to go. But you can listen more about that in the other episodes for this, because a lot with the movies we are talking about Danny Ketch.
Gotcha.
And I'm really going to talk about him in the Spirit of Vengeance episode. But yeah, I like Robbie Reyes. I got to tell you, when I had not read the Robbie Reyes comics until I was getting ready for this month. Mm-hmm. And I sat down and I read through the first, I want to say 20 issues. And I think I read them through in like a day and a half. Oh, wow. Like, they were really well written, mm-hmm. and it really held my interest. And I mean, the art was great. The writing was great. The storyline was great. Whereas I went all the way back to 72 and started reading the original Johnny Blaze stuff, and that was like excruciating. Reading through some of that.
Right.
The Danny Ketch stuff was good too, but yeah, that's the way it is. So, any last thoughts about this Ghost Rider and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I guess, or anything else you want to say to kind of wrap things up?
I think I've kind of already said it. I mean, I think he deserved better than what he got in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had already kind of past its prime, so it was kind of on a downward motion anyway. So it didn't. I think they were trying to help kind of revive it a little bit by bringing in a character that was something new, but was still recognizable with Ghost Rider. But I don't think I think they did the character a disservice by trying to shoehorn him into kind of the storylines they already had planned to go for the rest of the season. So, but yeah, I would say give Robbie Reyes, that character, another chance in another adaptation, whether that's a movie or another TV show. I'm trying to think of like if he was a secondary character, like who would you team him up with, if you were going to put him in another show?
Well, in the comics, he's part of a group, or he has been part of a group called the Midnight Suns, which features Moon Knight and Doctor Strange and Blade.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I mean, you can go those routes. I mean, there was a lot of people who thought that he might pop up in Multiverse of Madness. Of course, I think we thought everybody was going to pop up in Multiverse of Madness. I think an interesting one could be if they, or when they do maybe another season of Moon Knight, because the fact that Moon Knight is a dude who's kind of possessed by a spirit,
right,
kind of having that tie-in, and they could bring him into a season of Moon Knight. I really don't want to do the Blade stuff yet. A Blade needs to flesh himself out first, especially before you go too far.
It'd be interesting to see him team up with Doctor Strange for something, even just pop up in there maybe.
Yeah, and doing the stuff with the Darkhold that they did in Multiverse of Madness. I mean, even though I know that's what they had here, but I mean, that is a connection you make with Ghost Rider, because the Darkhold was written essentially by a demon, and so or evil god, or whatever you want to say, Chthon was. But I would say that could be interesting as well. I mean, we've been waiting on Mephisto for a while now, since WandaVision.
Right.
And we only got him officially in the first movie, the first Ghost Rider movie with Peter Fonda. But yeah, bring him back. And I said it in, I think, last week's episode, or 2 weeks ago. I forgot where I said it. I think I said it in last week's episode, and I will say it again. If you're going to bring in Mephisto, that's where you bring back Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, that would be good.
I mean, just go full circle with it and make him be the new MCU's Mephisto. I think that would be great. But we'll go ahead and wrap this conversation up. Again, it's 8 episodes, and I know you've kind of stated your opinion, but let's just flat out say it. Are these 8 episodes worth someone to sit down and watch?
I know I'm taking a long pause. If you like the character, I would say yes, it's worth. There are parts of it that were enjoyable. You just got to sit.
So it's worth it for Ghost Rider fans.
You have to sit through a lot of other storylines that you gotta have to sit through. They have a lot of storylines going on that sometimes it feels very disconnected, which was kind of how the show was at that point. They were trying to put all the team members back together, and so, but I think it's a slow burn for Ghost Rider, because he's kind of a mysterious character at the beginning, and then by the time he kind of gets to be kind of the star of the show, then he's gone. So it's like it's at the very end. But I enjoyed it. Like I said, I didn't suffer through the episodes, but when I finished, I didn't say, "Oh, I think I'm going to finish watching this season and see what happens next." I was like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm done."
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I think if you are a Ghost Rider fan, it's worth the watch. Especially, I mean, if you like Ghost Rider enough, because just like with the movies, the Ghost Rider stuff is cool.
Great action sequences. The car is cool. Yeah. The effects, I think, were done really well, even for TV. I didn't think it was that. I've seen cheesier special effects on other shows that I think they did pretty well with this one.
And I think this would be a whole nother discussion, but having the conversation of exactly how powerful is Ghost Rider, because he breaks out of that containment unit.
Yes, he does.
Which they had
the Hulk in, Loki in.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you got to think they had talked about how it had been upgraded. So that means they had to have upgraded it to prevent the Hulk from getting out again. But then, here's Robbie turning into Ghost Rider, and then he punches his way out of it. And then they even have Fitz say, that shouldn't be possible. Right. That's not possible.
Right.
So, you got that argument. How powerful is Ghost Rider? Which is a something that, again, like I said, could be its whole little conversation. But we'll end it here just talking about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And anything you've got coming up with 80s Flick Flashback you want to talk about?
Well, for the month of March, if you've already been listening, so I kind of took a break from new episodes. I'm highlighting other shows that I've been a guest co-host on. So I did an episode I replayed an episode of Totally Rad Christmas where we talked about Lethal Weapon. And then this past Friday, we just released the episode from Moving Panels where Laramie and I discussed Swamp Thing, which was a fun conversation we had a couple of Marches ago. So staying with the March Madness theme. So that's the theme for March, is kind of replaying some episodes that I've been a guest co-host on. So it's been a lot of fun to kind of go back and listen to those episodes. But I'm gearing up for the summer of sequels, which will start in June, for June, July, and August, where we're going to talk about sequels of movies we've already covered, like Lethal Weapon 2, Ghostbusters 2, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Return of the Jedi, some of those big summer blockbuster sequels that we all love so much. So,
I don't know about Temple of Doom.
Yeah, well,
but
it's not my favorite of the trilogy for sure.
Yeah, but that's exciting. I always like to talk about whether or not sequels are better. And speaking of sequels, next week, Blake Fowler is going to join me, and we're going to talk about Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. And I think we already know the answer to which one's better, that one.
No contest.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you, Tim, and thanks everybody for listening. Rate and review the show. Share it with other people. Just let them know about these great conversations, these nerdy conversations that we have. All right, but for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramie Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.